Yeah, just give a quick introduction. So this piece is not a new piece. This is a popular article that I wanted to cover. So just quick shout out to BitPleb Summit. So we are organizing an event on 30th March in Goa. And if you're around in Goa, if you're outside, please do join us. This is an open summit. So if you have a talk to give, we can arrange that as well. If you are been orange pilling your network or you have an interesting take on Bitcoin, I think everybody has an interesting take on Bitcoin. It just takes like it's such a new domain that everybody has something to add to it, add to the conversation, participate. So this article I just picked out because it's one of the popular articles and it's an interesting take. Not that I agree with everything what Swetsky says, but I think he's an interesting person and he takes radical stances within the Bitcoin community. And yeah, the ethos of Bitcoin is that it's a permissionless network, so everybody can voice their opinions out. Whether or not they will be heard and respected is the second question. But Swetsky does a good job at articulating a lot of the complex subjects. Yeah. And just my personal background. So I'm a law student. So I remember in my law school, jurisprudence was my favorite subject. Interestingly, so I think that primed me for Bitcoin and going down this rabbit hole. At the time, I did not. I might have heard of Bitcoin, but I might have dismissed it entirely because it's too technical. But I remember that jurisprudence, how it's defined as the science of law and approaches legal systems from a scientific rigor, trying to define frameworks and systems of human organization from a very from a detached perspective. So it's not attached with emotion or cultures, one specific culture. It's trying to define the best system that humans can operate under. And after Bitcoin, my reality just like shattered because the current legal system that we operate under is not friendly to Bitcoin. It's not friendly to the ideas of Bitcoin as well, let alone Bitcoin, the asset and the network. So for me to like for a lot of the time, I had a lot of cognitive dissonance. I still have it, trying to best like live in that world because it's like that's the world that most of us interact with. But also like creating a framework for myself. That's the mental energy that is going down right now, trying to define words. And that's where I have been vocal about this, that I'm not like criticizing any particular frame of thought. Keynesian economics is probably the only school of thought that I can now openly criticize and openly like hate on, because I studied it in economics in college, and I've also now studied Bitcoin enough to understand what the problem with money is and what money is defined as and what Keynesian economics tries to do. So yeah, and other than that, I've tried to keep my mind open. So like I gave an example of earlier, Mises does not take a completely radical stance against the idea of government. Rothbard does, and both of them are some of the most famous Austrian economists. So yeah, I respect their views, I respect their credentials, but I also want to like understand these principles on my own for me to like articulate and advocate for them. Anyway, that's a long introduction. I'll start reading now. So the format for in people who are joining new, it's like you're free to interrupt me, free to participate in the conversation. Yeah, as long as you respect just other people also voicing their opinion, feel free to share your ideas. There's no rules as such, and yeah, I'll share my best to the best of my ability of what I understand, and yeah, hopefully it's valuable for you. The Remnant, the Parasite, and the Masses: a psychological analysis of the core archetypes. Yeah, so archetypes is an idea that I think Carl Jung has popularized. So, yeah, father of modern psychoanalysis is known as Sigmund Freud, but Carl Jung is one of the famous psychologists from the last century who like was became really popular because he explained psychology without necessarily talking about God, but in a way, or spiritual ideas, but in a way which was metaphysical, which was dense. A lot of people resonated with it. A lot of people understood the idea of intuitive human behavior. Sometimes you're not able to explain a lot of the inner universe, but you can resonate with other people's thoughts and ideas. And that's where the work of writers, philosophers, and political theorists comes in, that they are creating their framework of reality and yeah, articulating it in a way where other people can derive value from it. I'll read now. It's September of 2021. I wrote a piece called Bitcoiners Are the Remnant. The masses don't matter. So I read this article. Somebody can read this. This is like part one. There's a three article piece. So I'm starting from article two because article one and two are pretty similar because he actually expanded on article one by writing this. So you don't necessarily need to read this. I think this article pretty much covers all of it. But if you like to, would actually recommend if somebody is like also interested in Isaiah's job, which was original inspiration for him to write this article in a more modern language, then you can also go into that. It was inspired by the incredible 1930s essay by Albert J. Nock, Isaiah's Job. In it, I covered the differentiation between two broad archetypes, the remnant and the masses, and made the case for why Bitcoiners are the former, while the general lemming like population are the latter. So, yeah, whether it's a curse or a boon. I think Bitcoiners are finding themselves to be isolated. Most of the Bitcoiners I meet are the odd duckling in their social network, in their families. Most of their family members or friends do not really share the same passion. There are exceptions, of course. I've met some people who have had their school friends as a group orange pilled. So that was very fascinating to watch because most people I meet are like the lone Bitcoiner. That's why also the word Bitcoiner came around because for me it was originally very lame. It's like, why would you call yourself a Bitcoiner? I don't call myself an interneter, right? None of us do when we use the Bitcoin internet every day. But just because you have the idea that there can be a money with fixed supply, you call yourself a Bitcoiner. I found that very cringe. But I have started to like warm up to the idea and also love it and wear it as a badge of honor because I think money can be scarce and there's technical reasons for it. I'm taking down the technical rabbit hole every day to understand it and verify it on my own. And also that's the philosophical argument against Keynesian economics, which influences all of the economic policy across the world, across advanced economies, across developing economies. So it's sad that it's so difficult to for people to understand the idea. And after a while, I also like started to appreciate the idea of mass psychology. I used to dismiss it. I used to think that people are too complex for there to be an idea of mass psychology. But there are clearly patterns, right? This is beyond just India. This is beyond just one particular religion. It's across the people. It's like some people clearly uh, don't subscribe to the idea of scarce money. So there's clearly mass psychology at play here. And if somebody can understand it, they wield a lot of power because those are politicians. And us as Bitcoiners, I think we need to keep our guard strong because these people like can basically explain their ideas in a way which makes no sense to us, but a lot of people subscribe to them. So it's a active fight, an active battle to be fought. I use it to present some ideas on selective adoption versus mass adoption, how 0 to 1 moments happen, and how trends then perdure with the inertia like force of the lagging masses. So, the previous article mentions this. I think this article will cover this as well. So the basic summary is that Swetsky argues for Bitcoin being having selective adoption. So, it's like people who are proactively looking for bettering themselves, who think from first principles, will be the adoption that actually matters because mass adoption does not matter. He argues for it that most people will just end up using Bitcoin because everyone is using Bitcoin because the smartest friend in their friend circle is using it because their favorite celebrity now talks about it. They will never actually read the Bitcoin standard. They will never use their brain. They will be forced to use it. So he argues for how we should not be wasting our time trying to orange pill the world. We should instead be building for people who are builders, people who are building towards a better world, and not waste our time to convince other people. Because yeah, you also argue for the inertia. It's like trying to fight a losing battle. I also took a moment to explore the remnant within the great stories, particularly some of the best of our era, such as The Matrix and Fight Club. Yeah, there are a lot of Bitcoin memes from The Matrix for sure, and even from Fight Club. I've seen both the movies. Yeah, a lot of ideas that Bitcoiners might resonate with. The idea of the remnant is generally thought of as biblical, but its essence is far older and permeates all of human existence. The story of the remnant is the story of the survivor, the hero, the pioneer, and the noble individual. It's been with us from the beginning of time and will be there until the end. Ayn Rand, she's another one of the popular, famous authors, not just in Bitcoin, but a lot of Bitcoiners are inspired from her book, The Fountainhead. One of history's most powerful thinkers depicted them as prime movers or men of the mind, particularly in Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. She also juxtaposed them against those she described as the moochers and the looters. It is here that I want to dig a little further. My initial article lacked an exploration of each archetype's psyche and did not accurately differentiate a third and very important archetype, the parasite. Yeah, so archetype, I think just my loose understanding of it is the basic psychological body. So it's like you can imagine like humans, when you look at them, you know their physical, like most of the times their skin color, their height, but archetype is not visible, but you will see patterns, right? You will see, yeah, some friend that you met in your childhood, you will see traits of that friend in some stranger that you become friends with in your adult life. So it's like on a very subtle level, you will see a lot of patterns across human personalities. So every person is of course unique, but you will see people behaving in such patterns that you start everybody starts to develop an intuition, right, of how to behave around certain people, what to not say, how to talk to them, so on and so forth. So there are clearly patterns, and yeah, Carl Jung has done a body of work on defining them, which are the archetypes. I've not dig too deep into them, but they are like elements of human personalities. This is perhaps why some people got triggered calling me elitist, Klaus Schwab's spawn, megalomaniac, etc. Of course, those comments came mainly from the lemmings that have bought into the idea of being a homogeneous part of the masses, or from natural parasites who are always threatened by that which is true, and that's fine. In this second part, I hope to trigger them further whilst providing a little clarification for a few of the dormant remnant seeking it. Yeah. Rand's work has been a great inspiration for me, not just because of the strength of her message, but how eloquent and precise she was in designing characters that embodied attributes of each of the three archetypes. Her protagonists embodied the values and virtues of the ideal man. The antagonists were flawed, fearful parasites, and they were presented against a backdrop of a hopeless masses, who, whilst often good at heart, were weaponized by the parasites to their own detriment. Yeah, I think most Bitcoiners realize this. Like Bitcoiners, at least the most respected Bitcoiners, are adversarial thinkers. So they will avoid falling victim to any popular Bitcoiner having a lot of say. So of course, reputation is a capital, and it goes a long way in shaping narrative and shaping what discussions happen in Bitcoin. But it's a virtue that is respected in Bitcoin to be adversarial thinkers. There's a famous article by Nick Szabo, "Everyone is a Scammer." So I think by Nick Szabo, I might be wrong, but it's highlights the idea of how adversarial thinking is like an everyday practice. It's like going to the gym. It's never that you do it once and you have a model that is successful, because yeah, the stakes here is the entire monetary network. So it's never a good idea to trust one person or even group of people's opinions on Bitcoin. I will use this model to describe and explore each of the general archetype psyches in the great game of life. Do with it what you will, glean from it what you can, be offended if that's your thing, or be inspired if you're a remnant. The remnant. Before we delve into who these parasites are or why the masses, let's review the archetype that matters, the remnant. Whilst I was riffing on a Bitcoin magazine spaces with CK about the practical and idea form, the idea is that the number of remnant out there is much larger than we know, and the ratio of those who are versus those who need to be unplugged is probably also an 80-20 type distribution. In other words, within the broader 20% of the distribution of humans that are remnants, perhaps only 20% are active, and of those, 20% may be considered radical. It's basically 80-20 all the way down. Yeah, and this is the part, yeah, I think I agree with that. Education in Bitcoin is very important because I think most people, and at least for me, it requires a human being for you to understand Bitcoin. For me, it was Andres Antonopoulos, then it was George Gigi, then it was the entire Bitsala team. Because for me, I think initial intimidation of Bitcoin being too technical kept me away from it for far too long. I think I am somebody who could have done my homework on Bitcoin way before, but I needed like introduction to it from somebody like Andres Antonopoulos, who is so eloquent about what Bitcoin is, that I got drawn into it almost overnight. I went down the YouTube rabbit hole, and it just made me so curious about learning about this thing more. And one thing led to another. I think I'm calling myself a Bitcoiner now. So everybody needs that education from different people, right? So Andres Antonopoulos to orange pill the entire planet. And in all of our capacities, we have observed that some argument will work with some people, some personalities will work with some people. Maybe I wouldn't be taken seriously by my friends or family. Somebody out of you, somebody out of my network will be taken more seriously. So more people getting into Bitcoin, more people talking about it, definitely makes an impact, even if on a very small level, but it's pretty deep, because I think every time one person talks about Bitcoin, buys Bitcoin, comes and participates in education, they are changing the world, because it's so early that everybody is contributing just by having an open conversation. And Pareto principle is one of the famous principles. I don't know how accurate it is, but there are good studies which study it empirically, and there are like good reasons to think that there is something called the 80 or the power law, which is that most things work in this proportion. It's like 20% of people will produce 80% of the value. And yeah, there are so many examples for this. Turtles all the way down. Of course, we can take this to an extreme and continue segmenting until the one remnant and then remnant, but that would be ridiculous. Let's focus on three broad classifications. So, for the sake of this article, he's done a pretty good job of explaining. So, all of these are remnants, all of these are people who are adding value. And how he puts it in the previous article is that these are the people that matter in a very like spiritual or metaphysical level, that they clearly understand the importance of Bitcoin, and in multiple ways you can contribute to education. It's just that the fact that you're using Bitcoin, even if you don't talk to anyone about it, I think is also participating in the value of Bitcoin, because it's from hodling that Bitcoin's number goes up in terms of value and even in terms of dollar numerical value. So yeah, education for me does not mean that you need to do something specific. You just need to participate however you think you can add value to another human's life. And by holding Bitcoin, by buying Bitcoin, by accepting Bitcoin, you are creating value because you needed to something to buy that Bitcoin with. Yeah. Yeah, he defines these three categorization. Now we'll go over it. Quick pause in case somebody has any thoughts. Yeah. And please feel to disagree with me. I sometimes might go on ramble.
Hello,
Makes sense. Yes. Hey, hey.
what's Remnant, man? Sorry,
So
I joined a bit late.
no worries, no worries. Yeah, hi, hello, Gordon. So the previous article defines it. I find a definition, but I think we'll go over it later. The previous article defines it as God picking people who are the remnants because they matter. So I don't know if I agree with that, but it's my best to the best of my ability interpretation. That these people make the difference in how humans shape. So there's this famous metaphor, right, that the history is written by the victors of war. So most of history is because those people who won the war, whether they used violence, whether they were ethical or not, is a second question. But they are the people who actually like got us to the present time. It's like those differences in how monetary systems work is because a lot of US had a lot of influence on world wars. So yeah, I'm sorry for like going in that direction. But remnant means people who make a difference to the world. So people who need to show up, people who need to work, people who need to add value, because these are the people who are actually going to decide the fate of humanity. It's not a given that Bitcoin is going to be the monetary standard of the world. It's by Bitcoiners who are propounding the value of Bitcoin. It's people running nodes, it's people accepting Bitcoin, and people understanding the value of a sound money standard, even though they might not be like nobody's completely aware of every component of Bitcoin. But yeah, does that help you understand Remnant? So Remnant, yeah, it's somebody who is making a difference. It's like this is the most condensed definition of the remnant. And this article breaks it down in contrast to the masses, which it argues that does not matter. It's like they will mostly just follow one or the other type of remnant. Or yeah, it also talks about the parasite class. That's like a separate segment. This article will talk about it, which mostly just feeds out of value that is already created. So remnant is the one who creates value, and the parasite is one which leeches on the existing value. If 20%, I'll continue reading from the dormant remnant. If 20% humans are archetypically them are dormant. Yeah, so from the he like makes this assumption that from the 20% of humans, if we assume that, yep, like I said, the Pareto principle says that 20% of people will be the remnant material which create most of the value that humanity does, or at least sets the standard for behavior. I think value is incorrect because I think everybody can add value in multiple ways. So I think that's incorrect. I think it's about setting the standard of behavior. It's like some behavior in some cultures is okay, some in some cultures it's not. It's because some remnant designed or at least defined that behavior by their own behavior, and other people followed suit. So this is how most of human history has evolved. Some person did something and set as standard for that particular family, that community, so on and so forth, and other people started following suit, and that's how humans became like localized, tribal, political, all of the things. And that's a natural evolution. That's nothing to like hate on. I think it's a very frivolous idea to think that all of us are like living under one global village, which is true. All of us are humans living on which is just one planet with human life. But I think there's good reasons why humans draw borders and live within communities, live within tribes. and there's nothing wrong with it. I think we should be appreciating it. That's just my personal opinion. They are either bogged down in jobs they don't like, they've been subject to parenting, they've been indoctrinated at school or by the media, they live in broken societies or are in some way, shape, or form hampered by their environment. Nurture. So yeah, most people are, yeah, like Andres also puts it, that Bitcoin is for the other 6 billion. Most people are not born in advanced economies. Most people are not born in rich families. They've had to push through a lot of pain to be able to be critical thinkers, because yeah, a lot of societies, a lot of, yeah, parenting and indoctrination by school and media makes it difficult for somebody to understand not just Bitcoin but just being critical thinkers. They are in the matrix yet to be unplugged, but have that itch, that splinter in their mind telling them that something is off. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can say this for myself. I think I remember in my college having always this deep intuition that there is something wrong with how. So at the time, I was just concerned with India. So there's something wrong with how the political or the legal system works. And I was never quite able to understand it. It was like just one college graduate of having dizzy college life. It's like I was never quite able to pinpoint. I think Bitcoin, I'm not saying that Bitcoin is the only thing that matters or is the solution to everything, but it's a major pillar of what's wrong with the world. Yeah, yesterday at TradFi session we watched What's the Problem. Joe Nakamoto, of course, does an amazing job at explaining what's the problem. And yeah, maybe if I had watched that video, it's like I think the video was out only 2 months ago. But yeah, that video does such a good job at explaining how money and Bitcoin is at the core of so many things that are wrong, not just with India, of course, but everywhere. They are the really gifted engineer or artist that you know who's just about there and has all the ingredients to be great, but has not taken that leap of faith. Perhaps they've bought into some garbage ideology that they are a slave to society and that their self interest does not matter. Yeah, this is the part where Svetsky definitely gets more radical in his opinion. And I think, at least for this session, I will agree with him for the most part, or at least do justice to his work, because there's like a lot of merit to it. And I think I have been victim to a lot of yeah, a lot of the propaganda as well. I wouldn't go into detail with them, but there's of course a lot of bashing of self-interest by mainstream institutions. I think everybody has experienced it in some shape or form. That yeah, self-interest is like bashed for some reason. Where when self-interest never means that you are unethical, it means that you are looking out for your own biology and for your own life. There's nothing wrong with it. In some cases, they are partially red pilled individuals awake enough to know that we are living in a cloud world simulation, but are yet to take the orange pill, that is pre Bitcoiners. As with all things, it's numbers game. There are more dormant remnant than active. They are the silent majority, but when push comes to shove, they will line up on the right side of history intuitively and instinctually. If the signal is strong, pure, and direct enough, it will wake them from their slumber. Those are the ones we must focus on unplugging. These are the people who will actively listen, who will actually listen and not just passively hear only to ignore. Yeah. This is where I call a lot of people are Bitcoiners, even though they are not buying Bitcoin, because I see a lot of people in my friend circle, in my family, it's like everywhere, right? Even the random stranger on the street, they are open to listening, they are open to having conversations. So they are a remnant. They know how to create value. That's the reason they are able to survive. And I think as long as they are open to the idea of a lot of complex ideas, of course, goes into what's wrong with money. But I think as long as they're open to having conversation, they are open to um, yeah, being a remnant. The active remnant. These are the 20% of the 20%. Those who have taken the orange pill, who are out of the matrix, who have woken up, who have seen the endless fields of human batteries with their own eyes and can now see beyond the lies and propaganda. They can not only identify that which is true, but can articulate it. They are the intolerant minority. The 4% of the whole who make up the last bastion of hope and freedom. They make up Zion. A member of the active remnant is most likely a Bitcoiner. Not that does not mean some lemming who bought a Bitcoin IOU on PayPal for the USD gains. That means a Bitcoiner who knows why we are here, maybe is orange pilling his loved ones, respects private property, freedom, responsibility, and independence, who refuses to bend over to the blind mandates of the parasitic class. If you're reading this, you're probably in this group. The radical remnant. This final category is the 20% of the 20% of. These are the natural elites, the true 1%, the leaders, the renegades, the fearless warriors on the front lines, who not only refuse to back down, but who march forward despite the insurmountable odds, reminding all the remnants that the truth is worth dying for. They are the 300: William Wallace, Alexander the Great, Nikola Tesla, Isaac Newton, Galileo, Steve Jobs, Morpheus, Neo, and Trinity. Despite being the ultimate minority, they set the standard, they set the pace, and they drive progress. Like the very tip of the spear, they pierce the veil, allowing the rest of the arrow to enter, followed by the inertia and weight of the staff, the masses. It's reminiscent of the ancient warrior fable. I cannot remember where I have heard it. In any group of 100, 10 should not be there and will die immediately. 80 are just taking up space. 10 will know how to fight. Of those 10, one warrior will make all the difference. This warrior is the radical remnant. And whilst he may not inherit the earth, for he is often a martyr, he shall be remembered forever. It may be tragic, but that is his role and he accepts it, dons his armor, and strides forth with the courage of lion. Where does one find the remnant? As God said to Isaiah, you can be sure of two things: the remnant exists, they will find you. The remnant are out there. I meet them wherever I go. They greet me and tell me the message rang true, whether at a conference, at a dinner, in my DMs, on Twitter Spaces, or that one other guy at the airport who also refuses to wear his mask. You know who you are. As the clown world simulation continues to erode the fabric, we must remember that it is we who shall inherit the earth, for we are the meek in the ancient sense of the term, which Jordan Peterson helped me redefine. The meek are those who have swords, know how to use them, but choose to keep them sheathed. Post every catastrophe or grand cycle, it is those who remain by virtue of being prepared or through sheer will and strength of character that are defined as the remnant. It is they who shall inherit the earth alongside a few lucky sheeple who happen to trip over and fall into paradise. So find the remnant, build bonds with them, strength ties. If you're not sure where they are, here are some hints. Bitcoiners, entrepreneurs,
Sorry, can
healers.
you go back to the guy who refuses to wear the mask?
Yeah.
Sounds really unnecessary or unimportant, but I guess it matters. Yeah, whether
Yeah.
at a conference or
Yeah. I don't think we'll
so
be able to.
what exactly? So sort of I mean kind that he's categorizing these people
Right.
into like the guy who refuses to wear his mask. They're like the 20% of the 20% or
Right.
what?
So, right. Right. Yeah. So I think from my understanding, I don't think we'll be able to cover the coronavirus, but the mask mandates that were like imposed across the world to wear a mask if you are out in public spaces. So yeah, he refers to that guy who refused to wear the mask. So Swetsky, like, it is incomplete. He is from that school of thought that denies that coronavirus required humans to wear masks outside. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, no, I get the point. Like in the context, he just saying that this guy questions the norm and hence he's the 20%, which is exactly what I was going to ask before. Like when he like defines remnant, is this a like a local definition or a global definition?
yeah.
I
So
mean,
how
like it sounds like every time he says he can actually go somewhere and identify somebody as a remnant, like forever remnant. Like that guy is remnant everywhere. That's what it sounds like throughout, but that's not true, right? Like for example, this guy is a remnant because he questions the norm, and that's okay. But at the same time, if you like extend your horizon or the domain, considering okay if he doesn't wear the mask he's being selfish and all that, so he is not that remnant with respect to some guy who actually sort of come up with a middle ground solution. Let's say he not only questioned like why should he wear a mask, but came up with something where somebody can actually choose not to wear a mask without affecting somebody else, which is some advanced health thing, I guess. But that is the real I mean you getting the point, right? That the definition of remnant is changing depending on how localize you the
yeah.
domain or you globalize the domain, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think I fall
Yeah,
in that camp of local remnant. So Swetsky falls under very right-wing ideology from, yeah, America. So I don't know if I agree with his ideas entirely.
the thing you elaborated actually is he is missing the second part of the thought, right? Just like you said, someone who might have a advanced technique, he considers that that guy is different from everyone, because he considers himself different and he doesn't have anything, like indirectly calling him a jackass. But it's like the 20% of the people who have everything, who knows, right? And still they won't follow, kind of thing.
Right. Yep, yep.
Yeah, but then it contradicts the the technical definition of remnant, which is basically the people who actually make a difference. So if you say
Yeah.
like
So
this guy is just questioning and chooses to not to follow something, but if you have to like move to a reality where uh, like some people do and some people don't, there have to be a solution. So the guy who questions and also comes up with a solution is the real remnant, right? And I guess this guy would bow down to that later kind of remnant
he,
behavior.
this guy will not fall into that category. Like he has made like three categories of people, according to his theory of what a remnant actually is. Right? It's just like he listed down some things, and there
I
can
agree,
be,
I agree.
yeah,
Yeah,
there can be some
but if
people
when
who
he
are
did
not
this
in the list.
sort of statement, like 20% of the 20% of 20%, he's eventually saying that this 20% ing is basically an operation which you can do on like on domains. Like if you like come to a smaller domain of a domain, you can do that 20% over 20%, and you can go much smaller onto the domain, or you can like globalize also,
True.
like
Just like
yeah,
an entrepreneur or something, just
yeah.
he meant, right? So yeah, this guy is not is the local guy, you can say.
Yeah.
Cool
Yeah, I think.
discussion. Like, yeah, I think we can continue.
Yep, yep. Yeah, maybe we can continue this discussion after the session. I'll read this again. So find the remnant, build bonds with them, strength ties. If you're not sure where they are, here are some hints. Bitcoiners, entrepreneurs, healers, tinkerers, engineers, artists, firefighters, bodybuilders, Bitcoin Twitter. Yeah, Bitcoin Twitter is a crazy place as well. So I don't know if you'll find all kind of people there.
True, true. Agree.
Yeah. Of course, use discretion. The masses have flooded every layer of society. Have the parasites. A Pareto type distribution will likely apply here too. So seek simplicity. The parasite, the archetype that I did not describe in part one, Ayn Rand called them the moochers. Most people call them the elites, which is fundamentally incorrect because to be elite implies one is exceptional at something. Parasites are those who have failed to compete on merit and must concoct methods of extraction that benefit themselves at the expense of another. In other words, they are a net negative on the system. I've run a crusade to reclassify the best of us as elite whilst applying the word parasite where it belongs. I even wrote an entire piece about it 2 years ago. Who are they? The way I see it, the masses are still 80% and the remnants are 20%, but a subset of each seem to devolve into the type of human who subsists by extracting value from the system. They are either a failed remnant, a slightly more capable, deeply envious member. I'll take a pause here. So, just my personal interpretation, or at least not even interpretation, I think just my experiences from life, that some people definitely like seem to subscribe to the norm so much. It's of course human nature to fall to the most um, easy idea in your local community. It's like when your parents, when your friends, it's like they all have some similar set of values. It's sometimes easy to default to them because nobody is like going to have an opinion on everything out there. So you're going to wear clothes like they do. You're going to talk like how they do. You're going to have similar food choices, perhaps. But I think a lot of people, you will observe that they will judge just on the merit of how others are acting. So they are not going to be ethical or think about the morality of actions or the consequences of your behavior as well, even deprived of all morality. But they just subscribe to whatever is the quote unquote uh, popular narrative or popular or safe choice rather. So they are clearly this. I've started to like warm up to the idea of mass psychology of the 80%. It's like in a gathering of one community or one type of people. I don't want to call it type of people. I think the word is just one subset of people which interact a lot. I think this is like the safe definition of politically correct definition. But yeah, I think it's definitely starts to take shape that they will not reason from first principles, but just fall to the safe default. And yeah, it takes for them a huge effort to change their behavior, having a better life from different decisions.
One thing I would like to say from what I have think about the statement that 20% of the 20% is the guy who would not wear the mask at the airport. I think what people are getting wrong here is like it's about sovereignty. Like it is the person's freedom to choose whether they want to wear the mask or not. It's not about identifying the person who wears the mask, because there are a lot of people who won't wear the mask and are not Bitcoiners. But I think a Bitcoiner has the right to choose for them, because I have, like, my experience with all the Bitcoiners that I have met is like all of them, they have a very independent thought process, and how they live is very eccentric to some people, and they that is how you, I'd say, would identify the remnant from the mass population. Is you find somebody who would not accept the plain answer uh, given in the textbook.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition of the remnant. It's like just exercising sovereign choice. And yeah, Bitcoiners, a lot of Bitcoiners at least, yeah, have that value system of just being sovereign in their decision. And yeah, I think during the peak of the COVID crisis, where not wearing a mask was one of them. One of them. It's like being a sovereign and exercising their choice to not do that, because the popular narrative was to do that.
Yep.
Yep. If a remnant they were unable to compete in the free market of merits. Instead, they applied their skill and ingenuity toward. If a member of the masses, they bought into the victimhood mindset espoused by midbits like Marx and decided it would be better to band together and steal from their superiors instead of learning from and working alongside them to become better humans. Yeah, so I think, yeah, if you understand or have respect for the smart evil, I think you will realize that, yeah, remnants can take this shape and form. And yeah, I think I don't know if this is even accurate, but I think Donald Trump has definitely showed that he's excellent at a lot of things. I don't know if I've not followed his life, so this will take it with a grain of salt. But I remember just watching his interview. This person was not a politician. He does not come from a politics background, but just to be able to, and he comes from an influential family, but did not have any political support, and it seems to be like critical of a lot of mainstream ideas as well. I am not supporting Donald Trump by sure. I was talking to the people who joined me for the first few minutes about how I actually fell for. I was being optimistic with Donald Trump coming and talking about Bitcoin and his campaign a lot. I actually fell for that. This was just the inner optimist in me that wanted to see just much faster Bitcoin adoption. But yeah, most of my support was just for his self custody advocacy of guaranteeing self custody. Whether or not that's a good thing is also a good argument, because a politician giving us the right to self custody or protection against government closure of Bitcoin self custody, it can also be stripped away overnight. So if a politician is guaranteeing you some right, it can also be stripped away overnight. But the constitution exists because some rights are inalienable. So there was hope there. Yeah, regardless, I think yeah, there are of course excellent and genius people who become part of the parasitic class. That's an ethics and morality question more than competence. They have proliferated in the modern fiat-driven clown world because broken incentives in the growth of parasites, much like a poor diet makes for an environment where they grow in your body and unclean places, allow them to proliferate in nature or especially man-made regions. Yeah, and fiat system definitely incentivizes a lot of sociopathy. There is a great talk by Andreas on this. I think sociopaths naturally get more successful in fiat standard systems because they are willing to like compromise all ethics morality to achieve their ends. And yeah, fiat money allows that because as close as you are to the money printer, you benefit from it. And yeah, having access to that is it becomes your ends because that's the golden goose, the ability to print money. Their most powerful innovation is proof of stake, and their crowning achievement is fiat money. Yeah, this pretty much summarizes this. Proof of stake, proof of work is the law by which the remnant live. In fact, so too do the masses in general, despite them being and many being desirous of getting something for nothing. Proof of stake was designed by parasites as a mechanism via which they can extract wealth from the system without having to work. In fact, over the millennia, they've become so allergic to work that the level of parasitic concoction has reached heights we have never seen. The democratic state being one of the primary examples. You cannot steal from the homeless man because he has nothing. Stealing from the masses is cute, but there's not much there to take. But stealing from the remnant is the most profitable and thus optimized for by the parasites in models such as democracy. Yeah, so for me, it's just taking some time to like think about democracy, rethinking over it, because I think my entire legal education and my exposure to political ideas was around democracy, and there's a lot of Bitcoin factions that, of course, like completely eliminate the idea of democracy being a good thing. So yeah, I wouldn't like have any strong opinions on it. But what I think I can say is that Tversky articulates this pretty well. It's like the modern organized theft of central banking is successful because it allows just enough room for entrepreneurs to be producing value. So if like this says, right, stealing from the masses is cute, but there's not much there to take. It's mostly the entrepreneurs, the businesses which produce value, which actually the parasite class is after. It's not after the value out of masses, because most masses are just making ends meet. It's the entrepreneurs, it's the businesses, it's the innovators, it's the disruptors, it's the technologists. So the modern fiat standard allows for them to be just enough profitable or productive that they are actually able to do that. So that's also why a lot of people and most of the masses will entirely miss Bitcoin, because they see other people being able to produce value and they mooch off that value. So they do not see the merit of Bitcoin immediately, because they don't see the ethical problem of it. That why is there a class of people that needs to mooch off value from productive class, right? Productive class is able to produce value because they are being constructive, because they are using ideas, tools, resources to create more capital goods, to create more valuable services and goods. So most people, I don't know if that that's I don't know how accurate it is. Most people can learn that. Most people without mooching. But yeah, the insidious nature of fiat system is that it is systemized because most think that there's value to mooch, and that's where the mass psychology and yeah, the criticism of democracy also like comes in. Yeah, pretty complex and controversial ideas, even for me. But I'm trying my best to come up with good frameworks for understanding yeah, how these systems are allowing for systemized theft. Whatever the name and however it may disguise itself, you can always participation of masses while rallying them around a cause to bring down more productive members of society who most often just want to be left the fuck alone. Tax the rich comes to mind from parasites such as AOC. AOC is an American politician, a failed model who too closely resembled Donkey from Shrek and so became a waitress. Perhaps she got fired for doing something dumb or was just envious of a boss who had likely worked for an extra decade to build a business, thus earning more. She, of course, decided to go off and join the elaborate game of theft known as politics, the ultimate game of the parasite. Bureaucrats, politicians, central planners, and modern bankers, they are all the same. They are all the parasitic class. They'll always use the message of we are all in this together to fool the sheeple into believing a lie and weaponizing their fear toward more theft and pressure on the remnant. The psychopath, according to liberation psychologist and Bitcoiner Nozomi Hayase, the parasites of the world resemble a psychologically varied beings known as psychopaths. These are people who lack the innate wiring for empathy and, as a result, do not see, feel, or experience the world through the same lens. I recently recorded a podcast with her, in fact, 2 hours before I'm inserting this section to the piece, which has challenged my views on the prevalence of nurture alone in the psyche of a parasite. Perhaps there are people born who are fundamentally and naturally predisposed to behave in a particular way, devoid of empathic values, and as such function more like incentive-driven machines. They may be more likely to not only thrive in a fiat society but look to enhance the type of environment so that they can fit. Although this may suit their needs, their ends in the short term for whatever timeline they see fit, I'm not sure it's the optimal strategy. Life has developed empathy, love, and a void that binds in humans as a way to exist on a longer time frame, and perhaps these attributes even transcend the temporal. I think this specific phrase I really liked, void that binds in humans. I think this even does, yeah, I think empathy, I consider myself a very fairly empathic person. I would say very, but I think a void that binds in humans like very perfectly summarizes. I have not seen this phrase in many places at least, but I think every human feels some sort of void in just being a human. I'm not even saying this is a archetype specific person, but I think humans are like almost born ignorant, right? It's like most humans are figuring out essentially everything just by acting as an acting human action. and they see results of their human actions. They see repetitions and patterns, and as a virtue of that, they're able to create more value or have a better sense of the world. And that comes from a void, right? Comes from a certain void of knowledge. I think ignorance is that void, and that binds humans, because even the most knowledgeable human has had to go through the phase of being ignored, and that's the void that binds most humans. And this passage just talks about psychopaths not having that void that binds them. Yeah, I'm not an expert, but yeah, I think psychopaths are a group of people. This is a much deeper topic and beyond the scope of this essay, but I will definitely be following Noz deeper into this in the part 3 of the Remnant series. Where does one find the parasites? In the cracks and crevices where value is being created, progress is being made, and innovation is occurring. They require progress and wealth creation in order to have something to extract from. And the greater the progress or wealth, the easier they can also camouflage themselves and their processes. Furthermore, if the relationship between parasites and psychopaths is accurate, then their inherent nature means they look for places to hide. I think this is more most of the bureaucracy class. So you will see that
Sorry, who's this Nozomi? Is this like a philosophy? Like
she's
somebody
a
mentioned Rand's
psychologist.
philosophy. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't like looked into her work, but Chwetsky actually mentions her even in the next art. Uh, yeah,
So what's the alignment? So he agrees with him,
right. So
kind
she
of, or
studies
opposite?
right. So she studies psychopathy, and she talks about how psychopaths thrive more in fiat standards, and you will see more psychopaths, yeah, rising to higher places of power and authority. So yeah, she's done her work on this, and this is yeah. I think Swetsky just talking about how yeah, like I was mentioning before, that it's not a matter of competent psychopath, but
So
their
this quote unquote psychopaths and quote unquote what parasites, are they the same thing or different here?
right. So he says he argues for them to be the same. The parasite class is the psychopaths which lack empathy and are able to mooch off value as a virtue of fiat money. Yeah.
Okay. So
So because
like
they are
I thought parasites or I mean it's so is it the business class or the people who are like say tax the rich?
the political class, no, not they're not the people who say tax the rich. That they are the masses. They are mostly just parroting opinion of some parasite class person. So it's the political class. It's the cantillionaire class
No,
who are
this guy actually says somewhere that like tax the rich is something which says which is with something told by somebody AOC, which is who
yeah,
is
yeah.
actually a politician only.
Yes,
And
Alexandria. Yeah,
right, and ironically, she is one of the like really less like very poor sort of politician.
yeah.
So
She's from the progressives and the yeah the Democrats. So the Democrats' main argument is tax the rich, while the
no, but you see, it doesn't matter whichever wing or political ideology, respective of that, politicians are generally very rich, like both sides.
yeah, of course. Yeah, they are part of this cantina class, right? No politician, no mainstream politician is arguing for central banking.
I will tell you what my opinion. So, this guy actually mentions. So this is not a paid article, right? Free article,
Yeah, yeah, yes.
not behind paywall, so anybody
No,
can see it, right? So
yes.
basically, this guy actually defames a politician. Without why? I will tell you why. Because that person is so poor, that person can't even like afford legal action. So that's why he is able to. So you get the point, right? So yeah,
No, I didn't understand. Who's not able to take a legal action? The politician who's
defamed here exactly.
okay, right. Oh, perhaps. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, India has some of the worst defamation laws, but I don't know if, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe he's just quoting that politician because they are poor, maybe. Where does one find the parasites? I was here. Furthermore, if the relationship between parasites and psychopaths is accurate, then their inherent nature means right. Bureaucracies, proof of stake, and stale hierarchical institutions are all examples of where these cancerous cells can be found. And the following examples are variations of how the cancer manifests: government, central banking, regulators, modern banking, management, crypto, modern Wall Street, modern hedge funds. Note that these are all committees. Furthermore, note the kinds of people who you've come across who work in these committees. Ayn Rand depicted them brilliantly, eloquently, and accurately in Atlas Shrugged. Jim Taggart, Robert Stadler, Wesley Mouch, Lillian Jordan. I've not read the Atlas Shrugged, by the way. In real life, they are the Janet Yellen, who's the president of Treasury, U.S. Department of Treasury. Christina Lagarde, who's the, I think, chairman of EU Central Bank. Joe Biden of the world. Raoul Paul is also a great real-world example of the parasite. He who masquerades as a fooling. Yeah, he talks a lot about Bitcoin, but he's also a scammer. There is a reason why the committee man or woman hates Bitcoin. Bitcoin has no committee. There is no room for them to concoct elaborate plans with which they can slowly extract the wealth others have created. Of course, bureaucracies will exist on a Bitcoin standard. I'm sure there will be many patterns across every industry and dimension of human existence. But the difference is this: on a Bitcoin standard, bureaucracies go bankrupt. They cannot grow into the abominations we see around us today, in which useless idiots work bullshit jobs just to pretend that they're doing something, which in fact, when in fact they are leeching. On a Bitcoin standard, the organization with the most inefficient bureaucracy and the greatest infestation of parasites dies. It does not live long and prosper. This is the inherent natural advantage of an economic standard rooted in reality, one which exists as proof of work, one which is time incarnate, energy, money. The parasite cannot survive, let alone thrive in such a place. It's just the free market mechanism of competition. I think that's the overall summary of eliminating parasite class. The central banking has not had any competition before Bitcoin, so it became an institution just by its virtue being a parasite because it has no competition. Because in every political boundary or jurisdiction, central bank is the central bank. There is no free market of competition of currencies or money. The masses, herein referred to as sheep or lemmings. We've already reached the 9:05 mark, by the way. So, in case somebody needs to drop off, please feel free to do that. I think I will be able to complete it within uh, 5-10 minutes. No, this is actually much longer. I expected this. Okay. Yeah, I think we might have to extend this to the next session. So, I'll just read this paragraph to continue it in the next session. Read it till here. The masses, herein referred to as sheep or lemmings, they are simultaneously society there too and continue on living, sometimes excelling and rising, mostly remaining average. Dangerous in a fiat society, example democracy, for their stupidity, fear, envy, and lack of character is most easily weaponized. But remember that the captain belongs to the most dangerous enemy to truth and freedom, the solid and unmoving cattle of the majority. Oh God, the terrible tyranny of the majority. This is from Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. There is not a lot to explore in the mind of the masses, for they are large jobs, TSA agent, packer at a grocery store, or a mask checker at the airport and shopping mall entries. They are the kind of people who consume a Netflix, Uber Eats, Real Vision, and McDonald's, whilst idolizing the lowest kinds of bipedal creature, where Fauci, Raul Paul, Christina Lagarde, or Joe Biden, they value conformity and certainty above all else. They believe compliance is a virtue and will signal it with all their pathetic might. They will believe whatever they're told by their overlords, will be the first to daub or snitch on their neighbors for the illegal act of having family members over for Thanksgiving during a fake pandemic. The image below depicts them in all their glory. Yeah, so this article came just after the COVID pandemic. So, of course, there are a lot of references to what went down during that. I think I'll stop here. I think we can continue in the next session.